Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, will the state form a compact with the Porch Creek Indians? And Bob Riley's making a killing off his SGO. And Republicans from Washington, D.C. to Washington County are quiet about the Mike Hubbard indictments. Silence of the Lambs. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics, with your host, Bill Brett, and the V Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
It is good to have you here, Susan.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It always brightens my day to see you.
Well, thank you.
Something that has been not so brightening, but illuminating and kind of shadowy, has been the fact that former Governor Bob Riley's SGO, that was founded under the Alabama Accountability Act, raised over $17 million in 2013, but granted no scholarships to any children. These are according to their own financial records. Baron, what are we seeing here?
Well, what they said is, no, in fact, we didn't give any scholarships the first year because it was new and it came on board late, but we're going to offer those the next year. The major problem I have with it isn't what took place the first year, it's what's taking place each year after the first year. There's no plans to have any type of real accountability for where this money's going. There's no, when you talk to the superintendents, they're not missing kids. Supposedly there are thousands of scholarships being given out, but no one can find any of these children, just a few showboat children here and there that pop up on the radio or pop up at an event and say, oh, look at here, this is a great example of someone being saved by this program. But when you look down, it's hard to track down thousands of children getting these scholarships, as is being said. And when you're talking about tax money, tens of millions of dollars in tax money, there has to be some sort of accountability in place.
Susan, should we put out an Amber Alert for Bob's children?
I think we might. I think maybe a good solution to this might be to put a check off. When you check a child out of one school to go to another, is this because of the AAA? Is this because it's a failing school? Because there's nothing available on that form for a parent to say, yes, I'm checking my child out of a failing school because of the scholarship program.
Well, one of the things that Larry Lee has done, and he is really a bulldog on this and does it all for free, he contacted 20 of the superintendents in 37 of the failing school districts, and they said they had 40 students transfer under the Alabama Accountability Act. 40 students, and yet they're raising millions and millions of dollars, Jack. What does that mean?
I don't think our former governor could be known as philanthropic Bob. Let's face it, he doesn't do something unless it benefits him or his family. I'm sorry.
Well, to be fair, under the Accountability Act, he has a right to keep, 5% of all the money.
Under the Accountability Act that his legislature or his buddies in the legislature passed.
Now, Susan, we've heard that Dale Marsh, who is the one who introduced that legislation, wants to up the amount of money for the scholarship from $25 million to $100 million. That's a lot of dough, isn't it?
That's a whole lot of dough, especially when we're not seeing the numbers. If we're not fulfilling the $25 million now, why do we need to raise it?
This is money that's coming out of the taxpayers'
and we're continually sold this through social media, through press releases, newspaper articles, on the radio. They're constantly selling that this is saving kids from failing schools. Well, show us, sirs, where are the children coming from? Are they coming from failing schools? If there's really only 40 kids coming from failing schools and the rest were already in private school or being homeschooled or are in non-failing school districts, resell the bill. Stop lying to us.
Well, Mary Sells for the Decatur Daily did a piece last week that said that homeschoolers, people that are in private schools already, and religious schools are getting the bulk of this money, even if we can't find them, they're at least saying they're getting it. This was never designed, I thought, for homeschoolers or people that are already in private schools. But that's what we got, Jack.
That's right. It's just, Claire's not here to say egregious, but it is. I mean, we're always sold this bill of goods by this crowd that's in charge right now. And the taxpayers suffer, and I think our school, and you look at the Accountability Act that robbed millions of dollars from classrooms, being sold as some great savior of failing schools, and it's not.
One of my favorite lines in the AAA, or the Accountability Act, is that this is also for families, low-income families with children in private schools. Does anybody know anyone with a low-income family that has a child in
Yeah, it's hard to get an MA at the Montgomery Academy if
you're making 20 grand a year?
If you're below the poverty line. Well, I want to switch to some folks that are making plenty of money, and they're doing it down in Atmore and out here in Montgomery and all around the state. That's the Porch Creek Indians. Their gaming facilities are bringing in somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion a year, and they said they are open to a compact with the state. Jack, do you think that Governor Bentley will make a compact, or what's the advantages of a compact?
He's going to be hard-pressed not to. You can't go around promising no new taxes when we have hundreds of millions short in the budget. How else are you going to make up for that money without taxing people? You're going to have to maybe pass a lottery, maybe institute a sin tax of some kind, and incorporate it also with a compact with the Indians where we get a certain percentage of their profits. I don't know how else to do it.
Well, Barron, you've looked at this quite extensively. You've got some thoughts on how this works.
Yeah, I don't see, as Jack said, we're in a budget crisis. I mean, Alabama's in a budget crisis. For the last 4 years, the Alabama legislature had to go borrow money from our children and grandchildren from the Alabama Trust Fund in order to make ends meet. We can't keep doing that. That's not a prospective way to run government for a long-term solution. So we have to find a way to pay as we go. If they're not going to raise taxes, how else are they going to do it? If I'm the Indians, though, I don't know that I want to enter into a compact right now. The state would have to do something to make it awfully juicy, because I've got the best of both worlds right now. I've got almost no competition because the Attorney General's office is going around shutting all the private people down. I've got no real regulatory oversight that I have to pay for, and I've got $1 billion a year coming in that I don't have to split with anyone.
Yeah, well, it's been rumored that they're taking a look at this, but some in the GOP don't find that very, not a good idea, do they?
One of the members of the steering committee came out yesterday and said that we need to watch out for these gambling people. We're looking at over the next 3 years, I think, a $750 million hole in the Alabama budget. I've talked to tribal members, the council members of the Porch Creek, and they're more than happy to help. They help in the community around them already. They're more than happy to help the state itself, just to be left alone.
Well, I agree. They want to be left alone. They want to do what's right. They're willing to make a compact, I think, if the state will meet them, as you say, with something worth having. You're watching The V. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more analysis.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Claire,
Glad to be
have you
here.
here. Isn't the Christmas tree beautiful?
I know, it's a little before the time, but it's good.
Well, you know, it's after Thanksgiving. A lot of folks are getting their tree up. You know, we put up 2 last year. We actually decorated 1. So
You had it up so long it died, and you
yeah,
had
I
to put up
just
another one?
had to let go of that one.
I know, they've been up in stores since Halloween, so,
Oh, I
you
know.
know.
It's like they play the music all the time. That's what you hear. Gary Palmer is getting ready to be sworn in the near future. He came out a week or so ago and said that he was going to term limit himself, which I think is an admirable thing for anybody to do. However, he said he was going to limit himself to 5 terms. That's 10 years. He'll be way past retirement age at that point. I mean, it just seemed like a little odd thing. Jack, what was your take on that?
Maybe disingenuous would be the word that comes to mind. He'll be on a walker by the time he retires. But,
Wow, that's cold.
I mean, I've been on one, I can say.
Well, I mean, you know, it's 5 terms, 10 years. I mean, most people stay there longer than that. If they go through and they're elected a second term, they can be there for a lifetime.
Yeah, I just usually think of term limits as saying, I'm 4 years and I'm done, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it sounds funny to say I'm going to term limit myself to 5 terms. That sounds funny, but if you think about it, it's only 10 years in the House. They're 2-year terms. 10 years, you know, if he was 52 and he said, I'm going to term limit myself to 10 years, you say, okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
It just sounds funny because he's in his mid to upper 60s, and that sounds like he's going to be awfully old.
Well, that's a young man's game. I mean, the House is not a place anymore for senior citizens. I mean,
Well, now, y'all remember we had Strom Thurmond there, and Fritz
Well, that
Holmes
was
was
the Senate.
always
That was the
I
Senate.
know,
Senate.
but that's a very fast pace in the Senate, too.
Yeah, well, the Senate, you want older people in there who have some experience.
And can slow it down.
Yeah, you don't want this going fast. You know, it scares me to death every time they put a 40-year-old in the Senate. They don't have enough life experience. I just thought it was interesting. You know, the big topic, of course, of the week, last week, and you know, it's going to be for a while, is Obama basically granted amnesty to 5 million people who came to this country sort of not legally. So you, Claire, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's a big issue. I mean, you know, we fought with all this immigration in Alabama when the legislature, when they passed this bill, and, you know, Republicans, the business community's for immigrate, you know, they're not really for the immigration, but you've got somebody that is a stalwart in Senator Jeff Sessions who's adamantly opposed to this and has been extremely vocal. I mean, 5 million, that is a lot of people coming in.
Well, they're here. What are we going to do with them, Jack?
I don't know. And, you know, you hear idiots like Sarah Palin say, ship them overseas. Who's she talking about?
I don't
shipping
know.
overseas?
She wants to
I
put them
wasn't
on a
aware
boat.
that there was an ocean between us and Mexico. But
Yeah, but one thing, you take all these, you think about Medicare and Medicaid and all the health care benefits, and the health care program is in the tank now. You add another 5 million to that across this
but
country.
what do you do with the law-abiding people who've been here and not committed crime, have earned a wage, and have done okay? What do you do?
Barron, help me understand this. I'm sorry, Jack. But Ronald Reagan, you know, they did something during the Reagan era that allowed amnesty for about 10 billion folks that were here.
They
right?
did. There were conditions on it. He did it in cooperation with Congress, which
Right,
Barack
it's
Obama
different.
has not done.
But I
that's
wanted to go back and check
apples
that
and
history.
oranges. The second thing was the idea was it would be done forever. It would never happen again. It was a one-time, one-size-fits-all deal, and you either got in then or you didn't.
Right.
And they would shut down the borders, but Congress pulled the rug out from under him, never funded the programs to shut down the borders. So he got duped by a Democratic Congress. Barack Obama couldn't get it through his Democratic Congress that he had. He had 60 senators and a majority of the House of Representatives. He could have gotten anything in the world he wanted the first couple of years he was in there. And he didn't do an illegal immigration push or anything like that.
But
he
he
wanted to
said
get
several
reelected
times
and
he
then
didn't
work
have the
on it.
power, right?
Right.
But he took the power.
Of course, which he's been known to do.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a little bit egregious, I would say, for a president to do something like this.
Well,
but-
you know, this president of sorts is a power unto himself, I think.
Just ask him.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, there's a process. You know, you can get a work visa, a green card, you ultimately can get your citizenship. And yes, it takes a long time, but there is a process that people can go through to become a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, but it takes a long, long time.
It
And
does.
If you're an unskilled worker, this looks very appetizing compared to Guadalajara. I mean, it's just a much more appetizing place for you and your children. It's a conundrum. I don't know how you solve
It's
it.
a vote-getting scheme for the future.
It
Well-
is. But look, think of it from the immigrant's perspective. Of course, they want to come up here. The better life, you can make more money, there's less crime. Why wouldn't you? And the worst case scenario is they send you back home after you've made a bunch of money and had a pretty good life for a few years. That's worst case scenario. So can you blame someone wanting to come north?
No, of course not.
If I were living down there, I'd want to get into the United States as well. We got a lot of great things going for us. You know, I want to change topics here because this deal about Obama brings to mind something I wrote this week, last week. I wrote a sort of an editorial and the headline said, Attorney General charges President Obama with 23 felony counts of public corruption. Now, that obviously didn't happen. But if the Democratic Attorney General of the United States accused Obama with 23 counts of felony, charges, what do you think the Republicans in Alabama would do? Jack, what's the first thing that would come out of their mouth?
Get out of there, resign, step down, go on. You got to go.
How close will we get to impeachment, Claire?
Well, I would think there'd be some serious consideration with something like that, yes.
I mean,
You don't even have to guess. We have an example. Mark Fuller was charged with a single misdemeanor count. A single misdemeanor count. Every single Republican, Jeff Sessions, Richard Shelby, and all of the Republican
Congressional
delegation and the Democrat all requested he resign.
But yet, Mike Hubbard is cheered because he's got 23 felony counts hanging over his head. Not one Republican has asked for him to step down.
And I've said it like 3 or 4 times. If I'm the head of a corporation and I'm indicted on 23 counts, my board of directors is going to say, you step aside until this is resolved, or they're going to fire me, one of the two, maybe with or without pay, make me leave, but not to rally behind me. You don't see people rallying behind Bill Cosby, and there ain't even been an indictment yet.
Yeah, and then once again, I know we've mentioned this before. You look at South Carolina, North Carolina, and Indiana, where their House majorities or speakers have gotten in situations similar to Mike Hubbard, and they've all stepped back.
Or they've been pressured from within
Or
the party.
pressure.
Sure.
Yeah. We don't see any pressure coming yet, but there may be pressure behind the scene. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with some more interesting stories. Stay tuned.
The V is sponsored by MediaWorks Communications, quality video production and marketing services. The Locker Room, fine men's clothing.
We all walk on a razor's edge, a thin line between life and death.
All of a sudden, I just got this crazy feeling, and I knew that it was my dad. And I just said, no, no, no.
The vast majority of my life has already been lived. I don't have very much longer. I know that.
If there's a life hanging in the balance, we're willing to put ours on the line so that they may live. And I came to the realization that this was it.
Breaking news now.
I'm overcome with anger.
You're not going to escape it.
No death, no pain, no sorrow.
And I want to ask you tonight, are you prepared? Are you ready?
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. This week, I had a great privilege being a non-journalist, according to Dale Marsh, being a non-journalist. I got to sit down and speak with a rogue prosecutor, according to Mike Hubbard. And all seriousness here, Van Davis, who is acting as the Attorney General in the prosecution of Mike Hubbard, sat with me and we had about an hour-long conversation where he reiterated the points that he made about these false accusations that he says Hubbard and White and others have been making. It was a great privilege for us. But what was your take, Barron, on the interview? I mean, he really came off well, didn't he?
I don't think he added any new information that wasn't in the press release, but to me, it put some color and meat on it, and it humanized it. You know, in the press release, when you read it, it seemed kind of sterile. You know, hey, I've been here 18 years, I've never been accused of anything. When I read your interview, it sort of put meat and bones on it. You could almost smell the leather in the office. You could, you could hear the echoes in the hallway of the cases he tried. It humanized it.
Yeah. You know, I didn't realize that Bill Pryor, when he was Judge Bill Pryor, when he was Attorney General, appointed Van Davis to look into that ethics complaint against Moore.
Yes, he did.
So that's a pretty nice feather in a DA's cap, I would think, that he's trusted.
Well, I mean, he's been known for years as a straight shooter and a stand-up guy.
And I read the article and I thought it was great, and I liked the way he said, look, we sat by and we let them call us rogue prosecutors and witch hunt only so much. And, we had to fight back. We had to come out and say, look, we interviewed 150 witnesses. We gathered thousands and thousands of pages of documents, and we looked into this for a year, and it took so long because we couldn't always get the courthouse, and, it was a very good article, I thought, and I was happy to see them come out and say, this is where we are, and this is why we're where we are.
Well, and I've known him for years, and I told him when we first talked, I said, I didn't want to have to come to the Winn-Dixie in Pell City and ambush you, but I wanted to talk to you.
But it's interesting. Most times when you have an investigation going on, whether it's the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Attorney General's Office, traditionally they do not come out and send a press release like this and talk with the media. But there's no question that Hubbard and his lawyers put Van Davis in a situation, in a box, where they had no other choice than to do this, because if not, they were just basically going to taint the entire jury pool.
Well, I mean,
that's their goal, clearly.
And the media.
Tell me about the fact that they had sent out push cards to the whole county over there.
Well, they were mailing outside the confines of the district, it appeared, to those working on the ground over there. There were people getting mail who were not registered voters in the area or who didn't live inside of District 79, which is, to be fair to them, not unusual that your mail would go a little bit beyond the lines. I don't know to the extent of it. But Mike had an opportunity through these last two contested races, the primary and the general election, to put out this message that he's a conservative reformer, he's the greatest guy that ever walked on water in the city of Auburn, and that Auburn would be nothing without him. That is the case he made. Now we'll get to find out what they think about it.
Spent a bunch of money making that case.
But that's pretty arrogant.
About $1 million. I mean, I still want to go back to this thing. Mike Rogers came down here, a sitting U.S. congressman, came to Auburn and led a rally for Mike Hubbard.
Yeah, and I have a real problem with that. I mean, this is like the Ronald Reagan, the 10 Commandments. You don't talk ill of another Republican. And for a Republican former House member and congressman to talk like that about our current Republican Attorney General and the Attorney General for the next 4 years, and who's chairman of the national organization, is out of line. I mean, he needs to be reprimanded, or he either needs to apologize to the Attorney General. I mean, I just think it's awful.
I think better yet, he needs an opponent 2 years from now.
A well-funded opponent, and Luther Strange needs to help his opponent raise some money.
Well, I think that might happen.
Teach him a lesson.
You don't go to an Attorney General that's of your party and accuse them of Chicago-style gutter politics.
That's almost like messing with the process, with the grand jury process.
You got to understand why is Mike Rogers so devoted and committed to Mike Hubbard to do something like that politically because of the damage it may cause him in the future? It makes you wonder.
Well, obviously he helped him get elected at one point, but there's some rule in politics used to be that you were presumed innocent until indicted, but Hubbard's breaking that rule. He's getting by with being indicted.
I think you may see some folks lining up to run against Congressman Rogers in 2 years, and it'll be well deserved.
Well, I think it showed poor judgment on his
Poor
behalf.
taste and judgment.
The other thing, we haven't heard a word out of hardly anybody about this thing. I mean, from Washington, D.C. to Washington County, we haven't heard a Republican say, hey, Hubbard needs to go. We haven't even heard Democrats saying anything about it. I mean, Barron, don't you find that a little spooky?
It's a little spooky. There have been a few Democrats here and there that have said he needs to step down, but the Democratic Party in Alabama has shrunk to such a point, when they speak, no one really listens, and it's hard for them to get a message out. The spooky part is we spent 2 decades blasting Democrats saying, when Bill Clinton was lying under oath, when he was harassing women and young interns in his office, you guys sat idly by and provided political cover for this guy. It was shameful and disgusting. Oh, wait a minute, one of our guys is doing it? Shh, cover it up. I mean, that's what's going on here. They're actively doing what we used to criticize Democrats for doing.
Right.
A lot of us, in building up the Republican Party, thought we were different. We thought we
Bill
were totally different.
Armistead told me in March of this year that if Mike Hubbard got indicted, he was going to ask him to step down as Speaker. Has he done it? No.
That's right. I believe the word was if there were more than 15 counts. That was the magic number I kept hearing. If there are more than 15 counts, the Republicans will ask him to step down.
Well, you know,
that's
and
not happening.
I think they should. I heard the same thing. I was told the same thing. The amazing thing to me, though, is they call for Mark Fuller, like you said, to step down, but there's total silence. Are they really that afraid of Mike Hubbard? Is Martha Roby, Bradley
I don't
Byrd,
know. I
Bo
mean, it
Brooks, are
really,
all
I'm
these
very
guys that afraid?
disappointed in our congressional delegation for, the same people that called for Mark Fuller to step aside haven't said a word about Mike. And I think that's pretty bad.
They're trying to stay neutral, obviously, or something like that. So I don't know.
CYA.
I think, yeah, CYA, but I think a lot of people are talking about it and think that he should, but they don't have the guts to step forward yet and say anything. That's the key. They don't have the guts.
Well, Claire, you got the last word. They don't have the guts. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch us every day at alreporter.com and every Sunday on your ABC affiliates throughout the state. Thank you for watching.